Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those I haven't had the opportunity to meet, my name is Doug McGee, and in my role of Warden Convocation, I'll be chairing proceedings for the evening. The University of Western Australia acknowledges the custodians and traditional owners of land on which any of its campuses are located. At the main campus, Crawley, the University acknowledges the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional owners of the land on which it's situated. Whadjuk Noongar remain the spiritual and cultural custodians of their land and continue to practice their values, languages, beliefs and knowledge. It's now my pleasure to welcome you to the Spring Ordinary Meeting for 2018. At this time, I'd particularly like to welcome former Chancellor and former Governor, Dr. Ken Michael, AC, SIT WA, Vice-Chancellor, Professor Dawn Freshwater, Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Professor Simon Biggs, the Guild President, Megan Lee, the Deputy Warden of Convocation, Dr. Joan Pope, OAM, the immediate past Warden, Adjunct Professor Warren Kerr, AM, Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Community Engagement, Professor Kent Anderson, members of the UWA Senate, members of Convocation Council, and all the members of Convocation, including their guests and friends. It's great to have you all here this evening. Second item is apologies. I'll now formally declare the meeting open at 6:34 p.m. and note I have apologies from the Chancellor, Hon Robert French AC, Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Professor Education, Professor David Sadler, Acting Pro-Vice-Chancellor Research, Professor Tim Colmer, and over 700 other members of Convocation. If anyone wishes to convey additional apologies, please see the Convocation Officer, Ms. Juanita Perez, who will record the details. You can do that after the meeting. I now move to item 3 on the meeting agenda, the minutes of the ordinary meeting in autumn, held Friday the 23rd of March 2018. These are enclosed in the agenda booklet for the meeting. Are there any amendments to the minutes? If not, as required under item 3, can I ask someone who attended the autumn ordinary meeting to move acceptance of the minutes? Dr. Joan Pope, thank you. And someone to second? Pauline Tremlett, thank you. All those in favour? I think the ayes have it. Carried. Business arising from the minutes, item 5 on the agenda. We continue to make the agenda papers available online, and a link to the documentation was provided in the email reminder sent out earlier this week. I hope you found this of benefit. One of the items is the Q&A. We continue to receive many positive comments regarding the Q&A session at the end of the meeting. We've included another Q&A session in the agenda tonight with a strong panel covering various areas of the university. Given the very special topic to be addressed by the guest speaker, we will take 2 questions immediately after that talk. And recognising the challenge of time and the breadth of the panel and a special request from the Vice-Chancellor, we called for questions on notice for this meeting. We received a very solid contribution. From these, we have chosen 11 questions, and they'll be addressed by our panel in the Q&A session. We chose them on the basis of breadth, of respondent, and so on. And we will conclude the Q&A session at 8:25 because obviously the club has commitments to which they must abide. Item 6 is correspondence. Convocation receives much correspondence on many matters as emails and letters, largely addressed by our Convocation Officer and me as Warden. I wish to thank all members of Convocation who took the time to contact me and Convocation Council in that period, as we really value members' views on issues important to Convocation, and some of those I'll cover in my report later. Obviously, there was one fairly contentious issue with the graduate email, and there was a lot of correspondence on that, and I think the responses were well received. The next item on the agenda is the Vice-Chancellor's report. Included in the agenda booklet at page 27, therefore please give a very warm welcome to Professor Dawn Freshwater.
Thank you to the Warden of Convocation, and good evening everyone. Here we are again. We blink and we're back at the next meeting. So I'm not sure where that time went, but a lot's been happening in the university. You can see from the report that there's quite an extensive list of achievements, activities and progress in the report, but I'd like to, as I would normally do, supplement that this evening with some additional information through a very short report. And then, as you've heard from the Warden of Convocation, we'll be hosting our usual Q&A panel. So let me also acknowledge that we meet on the land of the traditional owners, the Whadjuk people of the proud Noongar Nation, by the Derbarl Yurrugun, the river, and we continue to be proud of our commitment through our School of Indigenous Studies and beyond that to the education and development of the Aboriginal population. We, as you heard earlier, we're missing the Chancellor this evening, but he did ask me to send his best wishes and his regards. And let me also just acknowledge that we have the Deputy Warden here, our ex-Chancellor, Ken Michael, and of course acknowledge members of my executive. I'll move directly on to the slides here, and I'm going to start by just referring to a recent event that won't have been captured in the report, which was Open Day. And Open Day this year was very exciting in many ways. One of the things that you can see there is the autonomous vehicle that was moving throughout the campus during that day and gathered quite a lot of support and quite a lot of media interest. But it was actually also an important Open Day for us in terms of how we managed to create what was really a very vital and active student hub in the middle of the Oval. It was a great turnout for that day. We were blessed with the weather. It had been pretty awful up until that day, and then we had a wonderful day that day. So it was, and I'm sure as we go through this evening, you'll hear more about that. And maybe the president of the Student Guild will also want to say a few words of that. And just to acknowledge you, Megan, apologies that I didn't do that. And again, just to give you a flavour of some of what's been happening on the campus, what you can see here, a couple of quite significant events that took place recently. In the corner up here, what you can see is the speech that was one of the launch pad speeches for our public policy institutes with the Reserve Bank of Australia, and that was the day that actually Mr. Lowe was going to be doing his presentation to the business leaders in Perth, and so we managed to persuade a group of the leaders from the Reserve Bank to be here that afternoon and to have various presentations. At the bottom there you can see our new governor and the visitor to the university, along with Joe Hockey. And Joe Hockey was here as part of visiting the Perth US Asia Centre and was talking really about some of the experiences he's had working as the ambassador to the US. The MTP Connect initiative that I talked about very recently, and I think is mentioned in my report, is a state government initiative together with the University of Western Australia and the MedTech Pharma Company, working together in harmony in order to deliver and lead the Life Science Innovation Hub across this state. So we're leading that as the lead university. We're leading all the universities and bringing together all the work that's happening across life sciences, including what's happening in the hospitals with the Marshall Centre and various other initiatives together under one umbrella to really start to look at how we might lift the ambition around our life science research and its application for improving lives. At the top there in the corner, you can see me with a sledgehammer having a go at a block of concrete, and that was the day that we started the work on E-Zone, and that ground was broken that day. But actually, if you have a look around that part of the campus now, you'll see there's quite a lot of work taking place. We're really excited about that concept that's taken 2 or 3 years now to come to fruition, but is now starting to take shape, of the engineering zone, the E-Zone student hub, which will be a very lively and vibrant building. And one of those buildings where you can expect to see, rather like the Reed Library is now, and Jill, our senior librarian, is going to be talking about this, that what you can see is quite a different experience that students can have within these buildings. Moving on swiftly to something a little more sobering, I was at the G08 meeting last evening in Melbourne, and we spent the evening with the new Education Minister, Dan Tehan. So you'll be aware we've had a change of government yet again, and the Minister for Education now, Dan Tehan, who's been in place 4 weeks, has been focused in his first 4 weeks on schools. And yesterday, what you will have seen, I'm sure, in the media is the fact that he managed to get the new schools review signed off, and that has proceeded. And so last night he was quite keen to start talking about higher education and his involvement in that. It's very difficult when you're going through several ministers to really get some traction in terms of policy change, and to have to educate them, ironically, on education, and around particularly the funding model. And of course at the moment we're in a freeze on the number and the amount of funding, the number of places that we have until 2019. So we had a conversation about that with him last evening. It's going to take him quite some time to get his head around that, and of course that means for us a little bit more uncertainty. One of the things that has happened in the state that has actually been good news for us is a change to the occupational skills list as part of the skilled migration scheme. So the state government has announced a move to attract more international students to UWA, and that's as a result of a change to some of the occupational skills list. We saw a downturn through the changes to that skills list from 23% to 18% interest, and that particular 5% growth that would normally happen in this state that directly went to Tasmania and Adelaide. There was a direct correlation from the work that we did with Bank West. I won't say too much more about this slide, except that it is important, I think, to recognise this last point, which is that the Group of 8 commissioned London Economics, who had also done a piece of work for the Russell Group universities in the UK on looking at the economic contribution and impact of the 8 universities to the nation. The methodology was the same as that which was used in the UK. And these are the headlines, but if you are interested in looking at that report, I can make sure that we send a link to you, because it's quite interesting. And I presented this week to the Committee for Perth, and I'll be presenting soon to the Chamber of Commerce the outcomes of that report for UWA, remembering we're only one university, Group of 8 university in this state. Some states have more than one. But as a Group of 8, the contribution beyond research and teaching, not just simply related to those 2 contributions, we're talking also about tourism, goods, services, all sorts of other additional items there, was $66 billion in 1 year to the economy, and in that year UWA contributed $4.5 billion to this state. Given that we're a $1 billion institution, obviously that's quite a substantial contribution. On to other news around our achievements, and I do just want to acknowledge that we've had some significant achievements since we were last here in this room together. I'm mentioning 1 or 2 here, but there are many, many, and of course they are acknowledged through our academic board and through the various meetings and through my own UWA Forward, which is a weekly newsletter out to the staff. But to recognise David Blair, who was inducted into the WA Science Hall of Fame, and this of course was related to his work on gravitational waves, and also to recognise Dr. Melissa O'Donnell, awarded the Woodside Early Career Scientist of the Year, and our PhD student Armen Shivashi. But you will have all seen, I'm sure, that we also had Professor Akshay Venkatesh, the second only Australian to have been awarded one of the world's most prestigious mathematical awards, the Fields Medal. This is really significant. There are only 2 universities in Australia that have a Nobel laureate and a Fields medalist, and we're one of them. Very exciting for us. The other thing that's very exciting about that is it's mathematics, just at the time when we're really focused on STEM, on really wanting to work with schools, on ensuring that the kids understand the importance of maths and its application to the future of work. we are, and I have spoken to Akshay about this, we are delighted that he's going to come and do some presentations for us at the university. One of the things that's not on this slide is that we also won the Eureka Award. This is only 2 weeks ago now. Our Dean of Medicine and her team won the Eureka Award for the work that she's been doing on identifying single cells that are cancerous through leukemia and the impact that that's going to have on diagnostics. And finally, the Aurora Award for Indigenous International Overseas Study has also been won by UWA. So 2 other very exciting achievements in the last week. A couple of points around funding, and I'm not going to spend time on this, but I do just want to acknowledge the work that we've been doing through our research grants in the last 6 months. So a fantastic outcome for us. What you can see here is that we were awarded $17 million of funding through the ARC Centre of Excellence scheme. Now, this is not a small amount, but the research funding across the nation is shrinking. So there's a smaller amount of funding available through the research councils for us to apply for grants. This year, UWA won 33% share of that funding. The national average was 19%. Now it's fantastic, it's a fantastic achievement for us, but remembering that the pot's smaller. So actually, even though we've won more and we've won more awards, higher awards, it's actually less funding. And that's likely to continue actually over time. So I'll leave you to read that slide, and I won't say too much about the media activity. This is we report quarterly on our media activity, and one of the things that I'm sure you've already seen, of course, would have been the May the 4th be with you, the Star Trek video, which attracted a huge amount of interest from young people, and most recently the FIFA World Cup video, and since then the video that we produced around West Coast Fever, the netball team, of course, that we sponsor and that we were very proud to see in the finals this year. Let me say a few words about the vision, if I may, before I close, because I'm delighted to say that this week, was it only really this week, Doug, or was it? No, it was last Friday, a week ago today. Doug, Joan and Warren, and we met to talk about the convocation submission to the consultation process for the Strategy 2030. And we looked at that submission in detail, but importantly, we talked about how convocation could be more engaged as part of that vision over the next decade. And I'll come to that in a moment, but I did just want to acknowledge that of those 55 submissions, many of them were from teams. These are hundreds and hundreds of people working together to bring together some fantastic submissions, innovative ideas for the future vision for the university. And many of them came, of course, also from students, alumni, convocation, industry and government perspectives. A number of findings across there about our place, space, our social responsibility, reminding us, of course, that we are a social enterprise, and social responsibility is critical to what we do, and the increased appetite for us to really engage with the change and transformation that's happening in society. But what I really wanted to point out is 2 things here. The values clarification exercise that we ran across the university. People and culture is central to what we're doing in the future, central to the way in which we think about education, to our graduates. It's not simply about coding, it's not simply about STEM, it's not simply about AI or robotics or technology. None of that works particularly well if you don't have critical thinking, the skills of judgment, the skills of emotional intelligence, the skills of communication, and ethical reasoning. And so it's been really important for us to situate what we're doing in the context of culture and values. And our staff have been working with us in this regard to look at ways in which we can really privilege and prize some of the values of the future. I've pulled out one particular part of the strategy work that's going on, and it relates to education, and David Sadler's not here tonight. But let me, if I may, point you to item 6 on this slide. That particular point about engaging and collaborating with industry to drive employability and relevance. This is where Doug, Warren and Joe and I had a very in-depth conversation last Friday around the role of Convocation, because there's a really wonderful opportunity for Convocation to be engaged here in supporting work-integrated learning and ways in which we think about internships and industry-connected placements across our many thousands of alumni. And so I'm really going to encourage that activity to take place, and David Sadler is leading the charge on this following that meeting and is following up with Doug and the team on that, and I'm sure you'll hear more about that through the warden. What you can see there is that we are intending to have the strategy with Senate by October as a draft white paper, and then finalised at the end of the year, ready to launch the new strategic plan next year as part of the work that we'll be doing early in the new year with the Senate strategic retreat. So that just gives you an indication of the timeline. Now, before we move on to the next report, can I just say that we have been doing the alumni survey. The reports are in from the alumni profile activity and impact report, and Kent Anderson, who is leading this particular piece of work, is going to be meeting with Convocation on the 3rd of October to discuss the outcomes of this survey. But I'd also like to encourage you, if you have questions or if you're curious about that, to raise those issues this evening, either through the Q&A or afterwards through drinks, because there's some quite interesting outcomes from that survey that are very relevant to Convocation and for which we're seeking your help and a call to action. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for your continued support. I look forward to having conversations with you later.
Thanks very much, Dawn. And Dawn will, of course, be a member of the Q&A panel later this evening. The Guild's President's report is item 8 on our agenda, included on the agenda booklet at page 30, and I now invite the current Guild President, Ms Megan Lee, to present her last report to Convocation. Megan.
Thank you, Warden. Can you hear me? Is that okay? So firstly, I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are meeting on the land of the Whadjuk Noongar people, and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. My term is shortly drawing to a close with only 2 more months until I finish up as the 105th UWA Student Guild President. And as the uni looks forward towards what university education looks like, so does the Guild. But before we can move forward, it's important to reflect. So a few things on my report. 2018 has been a massive year for the Student Guild. We've been working hard towards achieving against our strategic goals as set by my predecessor, Nevin Jayawardena, and the student representatives, all of which volunteer their time to this fantastic organisation, have been working incredibly hard in order to deliver some key achievements for students. To put the past 10 months in a bit of perspective, we have offered a variety of services to our students through support services, opportunities to get involved, commercial and food and drink, as well as information and advice. So this year we issued 14,500 diaries, and 97% of students at the University of Western Australia are Guild members. We have supported 1,275 students through our Student Assist department, and we've had 52 new cases this year so far. We have over 187 student clubs supported by a volunteer student and the Student Council through the Societies Council, and we have over 100 student volunteering opportunities and 18,523 hours dedicated to clubs and volunteering so far in 2018. So I'm very proud of my Student Executive Council, as you can see us all laughing merrily there. It's been a fantastic year, and we've made some really significant progress in addition to that on our strategic priorities. So building relationships with the university. We have worked very hard to nurture a relationship with the university through the 2018 Action Plan, which has a number of projects that the Guild is working with the university on, everything from improving the digital education infrastructure to safety on campus for our students. We've also engaged with other national bodies, including the National Union of Students, the Group of 8 Student Advocacy Group, state and federal governments, as well as other national student organisations like the Union of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Students. Towards our operational excellence, we have opened a new refectory space, a $1.7 million new space for students, designed to allow students the flexibility to either sit and eat in our 20 minutes quick eat section through to the long-term study areas. And we are currently in the tender process to introduce 6 new outlets into that space to diversify the food offerings on campus as well. And in student representation under the action plan, we focus on a wide approach towards embedding student representation into the governance structures of the university, a commitment to better lighting and safety on campus, and considerable work towards improving the university's digital experience. For example, earlier this year at the academic board meeting, the proposal that was co-signed by the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Education and myself to make lecture capture mandatory and downloadable for students passed successfully, and I've just been notified whilst I was busy electioneering for the 2019 Guild elections, that our proposal to remove 70% weighted examinations has also passed through academic board, which was fantastic to hear. Our vision is to provide UWA students with the highest quality educational experience, and to ensure that every student has a place at UWA and that they feel that they belong and that UWA is their home. Whether that is providing them opportunities through clubs and societies to get involved, to make new networks, new friends, learn new skills, or whether it's if they need a helping hand through our student assist department or our welfare department or any of our autonomous departments and collectives such as the women's department, the environment department, international students. We have something for everyone, and we ensure that students make those connections and those important memories that they have here at UWA. A few things not captured in the report include a series of the academic policy changes that I had earlier mentioned as well, which were all spearheaded by the newly elected 2019 Guild President and the current Education Council President, Conrad Hogg, who I do hope will do a far better job than I next year, and progress through the Women's Department to establish a mobile text messaging service to ensure that students can get from A to B around campus safely. Also, I had the pleasure of attending the Group of 8 Student Leaders Conference. This was a project, again, spearheaded by my predecessor, Nevin Jaiwadna, but I had the utmost pleasure of seeing that project come through to fruition, where we met for student leaders from across the country, sat down with members of the executive of all of the Group of 8 universities to discuss how we could improve higher education and how the Group of 8 could be a sector-leading organisation, championing change in the higher education sector for the betterment of the student experience. Moving forward, we're looking into our engagement with students and better communication with students as the Guild, and continuing to improve our services. So as mentioned, things like in our commercial area with opening new outlets in the refectory, through to improving our services for welfare support, expanding services such as the food pantry, and most importantly, further discussions over my next 2 months as Guild President with Convocation on how students can benefit from the wealth of knowledge and experience from Convocation and from all of you sitting in the room today. Everything from work experience for our students, which is much needed, through to donations and support to students through the food pantry and other services like that. So it's been a big year, and there have definitely been some ups and downs, A huge challenge for us has been definitely pushing for the prioritisation of safety initiatives as well as improving the educational experience at UWA, for which I am very thankful for the support of the Warden of Convocation and the Convocation Council, who often give me suggestions on ways that I could improve the way that the Guild engages with the university, the way that the Guild engages with graduates, and what lessons can be learnt from years past. So thank you. And a final challenge that we have been working with the university and Convocation with is improving the attractiveness of studying at UWA. The Guild prides itself on being one of the best student organisations in the country, with the highest student engagement, the highest student membership, and the highest level of services, especially with the level of funding that we receive as a smaller institution. And a lot of these suggestions and ideas are definitely being followed through in the university's 2030 vision planning. So I look forward to seeing how the Guild will move forward as I pass on all of my hard work over the past 10 months, 12 months to the 2019 Guild Council, and I do hope that the relationship between the Guild and Convocation will continue to grow stronger. So thank you very much.
Megan also will participate in the Q&A later. And I think when you see young people like Megan perform in front of a group of her peers and her elders like that, and I've seen it for the last 6 years in my time on council, that the quality of the young people who take on this position of Guild President is absolutely outstanding, and know that some of those recently departed have done extremely well, and I'm sure, Megan, it'll be nothing less for you. And equally, I think it's totally unsurprising that when the university was set up, the university staff, the students through the Guild and Convocation were brought together and remain together 105 years later. I think that's a very wise move that was made a long time ago, and you see it in action in young leaders like Megan. And Megan, our very best wishes for your future beyond this year. Item 9 on the agenda is the Warden's report, and I'll take my report as read and really just wish to briefly highlight some important items that Convocation Council has addressed on your behalf since the last meeting. The first of these is statute changes. As a result of the change in the UWA Act, the university is going through a fairly solid change in its governing statutes, and Convocation is very much caught with that. It's a tough job, and we're working only with our component, and those on council found it extremely challenging. To that end, I think we found the benefit of what we have within Convocation in that the network is powerful, the network really can bring great skills to bear, and it's pretty well what Megan was talking about and what Dawn before her was talking about. The network that is Convocation can really do wonderful things. So we called on member support, and Greg Calcutt, AM, and Patrick Tremlett, who are pretty useful guys who've come out of the State Solicitor's Office and know their way around this stuff, offered to help for free, and that really has taken a heavy load and concern away from us. It's a work in progress, it's not finalised yet, but both of those give a great example of where the Convocation network can bring to bear what is very, very useful for this university. Secondly, graduations. We had graduations in July, and they're a regular commitment for the Warden and Deputy Warden, as well as councillors who participate in various ways. Always a happy ceremonial occasion, and we look forward to the December graduations. Convocation also is very much involved in awards. It's well established for graduate and undergraduate achievement that Convocation makes these awards. The 2018 ceremony was excellent, well attended, and a very, very happy occasion. It was a pleasure to be there. I think everyone who shared that night was absolutely overwhelmed with the joy and the intelligence of what was available to us that night. And Ben McAllister, if you've never had a talk on black holes, then I can strongly recommend it. I'm not sure where you'll end up after it, probably in a black hole yourself, but it was a fun talk, very well done by Ben on the night. 2 ordinary meetings ago, our guest speaker was Tom Murrell, and he challenged us to connect, communicate and celebrate, and we're progressing well, as you can see. It's about being contemporary. If we look around the room tonight, obviously there are some of us with greater ages than Megan, as an example, and the hair colour's not always what it used to be, but it's important that we can relate across the spectrum of ages that is Convocation. There are members coming through all of the time. More to do on all fronts, and we'd hope to unveil for tonight the new University Club screen that will display Convocation's activities, events and achievements. So in the corridor just to the end of the cafe, watch that space, because very soon you will see a live screen that will permanently display a range of our achievements and our activities, and I hope it becomes a hub of interest within the University Club. We participated in the recent University Open Day, and you can see that university entry age has dropped considerably from that one. But Melissa, thanks very much for being there and having your young daughter in her Convocation shirt. I think she qualified very well on the day. It was a good day, and it was good to be there, and as the Vice-Chancellor mentioned, it was a very positive day all around. Information on UWA graduations has been used in our green paper as submitted to the Vice-Chancellor, as Dawn mentioned, and it highlights that there are many more graduates from recent years than those years gone by where many of us graduated. It shows the importance of this connect, communicate, celebrate ideal for Convocation and for the university, because we really want to keep everyone as interested we can for a long time. In terms of finance, our Finance Committee is carefully reviewing our financial management, and you can see that we have statutory and other functions, and the university is a generous and important supporter of Convocation and its council, and enables events like the ordinary meeting tonight to be supported and funded through its means. We also have initiatives that can be funded through other more discretionary means in the university, and we thank them for that support, and of course having our own reserves and our own contributions as well. Library membership. It's very appropriate to talk about this with Jill Ben here tonight to talk about the library, and you're going to go wow when you see and hear what Jill has to say. Within the process of library membership, there's a restructuring of access to some of the discretionary funds related, amongst other things, to change a process of access by graduates to library membership. The university is aiming simply to broaden the access to library membership to all of its graduates. It's an example of where Convocation has led the way, but that way is now important to be made available to others, because things have changed, times have changed, and so the way things are being done has changed. It can add broader value to the university, and we hope to have that finalised so that the new library membership arrangement can be in place for 2019. You know, you've been waiting for this one, some of you. Lifetime email. Believe me, it was a hot issue. I had a week in Darwin when Kent and Dawn and others were in Perth, and we communicated regularly from afar because it was necessary. The lifetime email was a hot issue, and it did impose change on anyone who was involved with those emails. The decision was made after strong and consistent advice from the university, and in adopting the longer time frame for decommissioning, we certainly took the sensible and correct step, but the advice continued that the security concern was real and it was not appropriate to continue with the lifetime email as it had been run. Again, it was a good initiative taken by Convocation in the past, and it was appropriate for us to go with the times when the advice was that it could no longer be sustained. The Convocation question. This is when you become warden, things like these give you agony. It's often presented to me as a difficulty, and yet the basis is incredibly sound because we've been around for 105 years, so Convocation is very much a part of the university. We have a real history. So in my mind, I mulled with Connor's with and vocation as profession, but in discussions I had the Latin still won out. So you can play games with it, but you can look at it many ways. There's no doubt that graduation and movement into the profession are the when and why we first come together. And for some of us that can become a regular event, and ideally we need more than that. Obviously many move away from the university and that being with Convocation for a long time. So just thinking maybe there are other ways of looking at it and presenting ourselves, because we all have work, family, location and other distractions. 6 years ago, I had very little to do with Convocation. Today my wife would argue otherwise, but it's worth the thought to look at how else we might do things and how productive we might be if we went down those paths. There are several real challenges for Convocation and Council, particularly around the 2030 paper, and I am very much delighted to be involved in the process with Dawn and the executive. It's important that we are. Our challenges are there to support the university, support and enhance the UWA student experience. Megan put it beautifully, that they're looking for us to be with them. To support the graduates, we can't forget ourselves. We must be working for the graduates as well. To be relevant to the students and graduates and to add value through all of the above. And to do that, we've got to be known and be hidden. To my mind, we can't hide or be hidden, and why would we be here? We know it's about the network of friends and colleagues, and that can do so much for the students and their experience if enlisted. And there are ways, and Megan had highlighted the sort of friendship aspect of it as well as the work aspect of it. We can perform in all of those situations. And I guess that's why I've said I'll ride a bike. If the network gets behind me in Convocation, it may end up being an impressive result. If the strength of the network is weak, then I'll get sore legs, but so be it. I'll undoubtedly enjoy the ride. I can assure you that Warden of Convocation is a demanding and exciting role, but there are many who help to make it possible. Now, my particular thanks go to those listed behind me, and especially to the last listed, Professor Kent Anderson, with whom I've had the pleasure of working very closely, as I know Warren Kerr before me. And Kent, just a quick duck to the stage, please. I would just like to give you a little thank you. No words because we'll see you later, but Kent, thank you. And Kent and I will also be members of the Q&A panel later this evening. The next item is the Convocation Officers Report, and it's contained in pages 46 to 48 of the agenda booklet. This report's required in the UWA statutes. It simply contains a list of graduates whose whereabouts have become unknown since our last ordinary meeting in March this year. To assist you to quickly locate colleagues and friends, this is sorted by faculty and year of graduation to hopefully help you check if there's anyone you may know. And you will, because I know there have been recent occasions where I've found someone, have got back to them, and they're back in the fold, and that's really how it should work. Please examine the list. If you know the whereabouts of any of those included, I'd ask you to contact Juanita Perez, our Convocation Officer. The next item also is somewhat mechanical. Item 11, the Independent Audit Report. It's provided for your information in the agenda booklet commencing at page 49. It has been considered and endorsed by Convocation Council on your behalf. The audit report's without any qualifications and demonstrates that Convocation is in a healthy financial state and able to pay our debts when they fall due. On your behalf, I wish to commend the work of our former Treasurer, Dr. Brett Davies, and the Convocation Officer, Juanita Perez, for their contribution to this excellent outcome. We now move to other business, and we have some important other business to deal with. We wish to recognise someone who's made an immense contribution to the university. But to do this, not me, but I'd love to invite Deputy Warden of Convocation, Dr. Joan Pope, to the stage. Please welcome Joan.
It's hard to keep a secret. I had to tell someone that they really were required to be here tonight. So I remember last year, with great pleasure, Leslie Kaler, who was awarded a Convocation medal, we didn't have to tell her. We knew that Leslie would be at the meeting. And it was a huge delight to see the look on your face, Leslie, when your name was announced. Tonight we have someone that I very personally would like to welcome. Her name is Patricia Stroud. Pat, as a part-time, mature-age student at the university, was absolutely thrilled to find that she could become a member of the Student Dramatic Society. And this she did, involving herself acting and directing on stage, managing costumes and lighting, backstage, promoting and marketing and doing the box office, front of house. And also, over the years, being a committee treasurer, a committee secretary, and from time to time, president. Born in the UK and educated in Staffordshire, Pat actually trained in nursing, and her working career included appointments as staff nurse, sister in charge and tutor sister, with a full range of duties in various hospitals in London, Cambridge and Northampton. Let's get the date right, yes, in 1966 she married a medical student, surprise, surprise, what nurses do. And in 1974 the family came to Perth, where Pat then trained as a volunteer telephone counsellor with the Samaritans. The Strouds moved to Auckland for a few years and then, thank goodness, returned to Perth. After completing her BA, which was a major in Renaissance literature and theatre studies, I don't think that exists anymore, so it was probably pretty rare. Pat continued a range of similar honorary duties with GRADS, the Graduate Dramatic Society, the same sort of thing she'd done with UDS. And the 20 years of the GRADS summer Shakespeare season at the New Fortune Theatre saw her scrubbing the outdoor chairs, being the prompt for rehearsals, the costume manager, and of course throwing in a bit of acting as well. And in a very practical and well-received cost-saving measure for the society, she completed a stage lighting technician's course so that we didn't have to pay quite so much for the technicians. Pat's interest and involvement in the Perth Theatre grew from her UDS contacts, and she gained professional production assistance and experience with John Milton, Timothy West, Raymond Omaday and Geoffrey Gibbs, to name but a few well-known directors. And then through GRADS, she became very much part of the amateur community theatre. She was honorary secretary for ITA, the Independent Theatre Association, responsible for their newsletter. She coordinated the annual State Drama Festival and the annual Finley Awards. She'd been an assistant administrator for the wonderful York Theatre Festival, which she used to have with the English department. She was administrator for an outfit that I was involved with called CATS, Children's Activities Time, and she was artistic director for 3P, Plays Plus Players, and just as another one, founded something called Omnibus Productions as well. During the 1990s, she was a broadcaster for our wonderful university radio station. Hope you all remember 6UVS FM with Rita Clark and all the wonderful radio programs, but also Pat was involved with the RTR FM and the Art Beat and Wavelength and all sorts of programs dealing with the arts and the theatre. Last year was the 30th year of her recording books for the vision impaired, and she was recognised for that extraordinary achievement, and she was also awarded second place in the inaugural National Audio Book of the Year Award for her wonderful presentation of Elizabeth Jolly's book, Sugar Mother. From 2012, Pat was the real anchor person of our poetry reading group called Well Versed. Members of this group were predominantly retired UWA academics, old grads and old UDS members. Theirs were the voices we recorded for that wonderful centenary show, Luminous Night, if you remember, with all the wonderful production on Wenthrop Hall. Much of Pat's personal store of theatre memorabilia was donated to us, who were the volunteers of UWatch, UWA Campus History Theatre. And it formed the centenary collection of theatre activities by various university groups, and we presented it to the Vice-Chancellor, Paul Johnson, for the centenary in 2013. Her prodigious memory, thank goodness, had been captured in an oral history. She has willingly assisted with celebratory gatherings such as the 60th birthday of GRADS, the Graduate Dramatic Society, and the significant anniversaries of the Sunken Garden, the Octagon, the New Fortune and Dolphin. And in this year, which has just concluded the actual centenary of the University Dramatic Society itself, congratulations from Convocation, Pat. One of its members we would like to present with the Convocation Medal. Over to Doug and Pat. If you don't want to come up the stairs, we'll do it just there. And Manny, can you capture the moment? Good on you.
Thanks very much, Joan, and Pat, wonderful. I think we'd all like a CV like that. Actually, Pat, we have a wandering microphone. Would you like to say a few words? If Juanita, where's the wandering microphone? Oh, hold it, it's coming. I think it only appropriate. And just while the microphone's coming, I think I can surprise many of you by telling you that the score at the moment is something like about 10 or 11 goals to 3, with Collingwood winning. So, Pat, over to you.
Thank you. Well, I just wanted to thank you all very much indeed. Thank Convocation for remembering me. I had a terrific time at UWA. I had 3 children at home and a husband who was a doctor, never at home. So it was quite an interesting time. I've done a lot of work in the theatre since then, and it's just all been a terrific experience. Alas, now I'm sort of having to sit down a little bit more than I was on my feet before, but that doesn't seem to matter. So thank you very much for being here tonight, and thank you very much for my certificate. And it's good to be remembered, and I didn't come in with any great expectations, but I've gone on with some very happy memories. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pat. Wonderful. Second item of other business is something we started last year. I think all of you appreciate that Convocation is very much a voluntary organisation and led by a voluntary council. We may have to be elected, but it's very much a volunteer work that goes on. And so last year we joined with the Student Guild to recognise an outstanding volunteer from the Student Guild with the award of a Convocation Medal. So this will happen each year. This year I have much pleasure in presenting the award for the best student volunteer through the Guild volunteering to Jiwei Lee. And it's impressive. She currently volunteers with various organisations, including playing with children who are ill at Perth Children's Hospital, attending St John's events as an event health officer. She's a student volunteer coordinator at Swan Estuary Reserves Action Group Incorporated to recruit UWA student volunteers to volunteer at Pelican Point at Matilda Bay on the first Saturday of every month. She's also recently volunteered 4 semesters as a uni mentor at UWA, attended regularly to Guild volunteering for the micro volunteering organisations, and volunteered for the Save the Children book sale where she assisted selling and packing books. Jiwei said that last semester would have been her busiest time period, where she volunteered in 6 different organisations. It's my pleasure to ask Jiwei, I know she's here somewhere, to come to the stage and receive her award so we might all recognise the contribution made by a young and hugely committed Guild student volunteer. You should take that. That's in your hand.
Thank you, UWA, for recognizing my contributions. I think being a volunteer have given me much more opportunities to be open and to be myself, because I like to interact with people. And the reason why I do this volunteering, because it started from one of my dearest teacher tutored me when I was in high school. She was a tutor. She's voluntarily helped me when I was in high school. So when I come to uni, I thought UWA have a lot of university work. It's already heavy enough. Let's do something interesting. So I started to do some volunteering work, and it's really nice to do volunteering, because when you do volunteering, you see people interacting with people, they just being there, they just want to contribute. And it's so nice to communicate with them and to be a part of their presence, because at that moment you are sharing what you can do for the community, and it's an honor to be recognized and to be a part of this community, because it allows myself to grow as a person, to see a lot of people in the communities care, and a lot of people voluntarily to do all those meaningful jobs to help those people, to help others. And I am very fortunate to realize I could volunteer for different things, different organizations. It really opens a door for me, and I am really fortunate to be a part of this community. And I need to thank my parents, my mom and dad, for always allowing me to go out to volunteer, even though because they care for me a lot. And I also want to thank those people who have helped me along the way, for me to realize I could be a part of this community as well, to contribute, even though it might be very small. It will make a very meaningful change, and I thank you, everyone.
Congratulations, you. I think that really says it all, doesn't it? If you want enthusiasm, it's a package there. Other business items for us. The convocation elections are approaching, and the current office holders in these honorary positions complete their term in March 2019, and all are eligible for re-election. I think Juanita's not getting things to move. I wonder if I can. There we go. The positions you can see on the screen are all up for election: warden, deputy warden, 7 members of council convocation, and 1 member of Senate elected by convocation. If you wish to nominate for those positions, please contact the Convocation Officer or the WA Electoral Commission. Adverts are going out for the election around now, so it's becoming current by the day. The actual nominations open on Wednesday the 7th of November and close at 12 noon on Wednesday the 5th of December. So there is a tight time frame. If you miss the boat, you've missed the boat. The electoral roll will close at 12 noon on the 5th of December. If your details have changed, you may update your postal address and other details as shown there, or go to our website to see that. How are you clicking, Juanita? Let me do it. It's okay. Next one is the 50th year reunion, 50 years from graduation. It's an annual reunion luncheon for graduates hosted by Convocation Council. It really goes from strength to strength every year, with an excellent 2017 reunion for the graduates of 1967. And the worry for some of us is you realise those numbers are getting closer to home all of the time. Here, though, we do need your assistance to locate graduates of 1969 for the next year that we have been unable to locate, who we wish to invite. They're listed on page 58 of the agenda booklet, so please have a look. If you think you may know a few of them, then dob them in and suggest that they should come along. It's a wonderful lunch and a very happy occasion. This year, the reunion lunch will be held in Hackett Cafe, the old ref, at noon on Saturday the 20th of October 2018. So I'll be 1 week over my bike ride at that stage. Next one, how are we going, Juanita? Armistice Day celebrations. This is really going back, but it's important. The Cultural Precinct, in conjunction with Convocation and the UWA Historical Society, is arranging an exhibition of photos and memorabilia in the Colonnade Gallery here at the club, commemorating the centenary of the Armistice of the Great War. It opens on Friday the 9th of November and will be up for several months. It's curated by recent graduate and new Convocation member Holly Langford-Smith, with assistance of Dr. Joan Pope, UWA Archivist Maria Cavallo, and Guild Archivist Melissa Hetherington. Dr. Anna Gray, AM, former Director of the Lawrence Wilson Art Gallery, will present a high tea talk on November the 24th on the art of war, featuring Streeton and Lambert. The Honour Board, noting the members of Senate, staff, Convocation and students who served in the Great War, has been restored and corrected and will be relocated in the upper foyer of Winthrop Hall. This will be unveiled on the late afternoon of the 11th of November. And it's hoped that a memorial plaque organised by the UWA Historical Society with a grant from the Department of Veterans Affairs through Julie Bishop will also be dedicated the same afternoon. For more details on these two events, please see the posters on the easels, the entrance to the banquet hall, or contact the University Club reception for bookings. And thanks to all of you. This marks close to the conclusion of my second year as Warden of Convocation, and it remains for me to thank all my colleagues on Convocation Council for the support they've given me over this past year. It's been a pleasure and a privilege to undertake the role of Warden and to contribute to the University in this manner. However, none of it would be possible without the wonderful assistance provided by our diligent, dedicated, diplomatic, hard-working but unable to make the clicker work Convocation Officer. And I'd like to thank her for her advice and guidance over the past year and for coordinating the arrangements of this meeting. You would be staggered how much goes on behind this to make it happen pretty smoothly apart from the clicks. I'd also like to thank the various university teams, BMR you had working for you outside, and the club obviously. Special thanks to Deputy Warden Joan Pope for her time selecting the Convocation photos that give real character to the ordinary meeting booklet. I'm not quite so sure about the cover picture, but I've never made a cover before, so I'll take it. Also wish to thank Manny Tomeo Photography. Manny provides services at all of our meetings and does it just so well. Because of Manny, when the screen goes up around the corner in the club, there will really be something to see because we have a vast record of past events and we know that every future event will be recorded beautifully by Manny. So Manny, thanks for the past, tonight and the future. He's an MBA graduate and provides all these wonderful, wonderful shots. Now drinks and supper will be served on the terrace. Access to the terrace is through the doors to my left, so you go that way, not that way. If you go that way, Juanita will trip you up and turn you around and make you come back. So please leave the meeting that way. I really look forward to having a chat with as many as I can after, and I'm sure all on the panel and all of our councillors would do exactly the same. So thank you for coming. Very great pleasure to have you tonight. I guess, I haven't checked, but I would guess that Collingwood won.